right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem Rakakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessing and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem Al Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believers, the listeners who may have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shah. All right, and what I want to get into today, all right, is dealing with the last transition. Okay, the last transition, because as we have to understand, which when you go into the scriptures, you get it. All right, and that last transition is going to be the kingdom of Esau. All right, which is going to be translated into the kingdom of Yahweh Shai. All right, which ultimately is the kingdom of Israel. All right, their righteous kingdom. So what we're seeing, because throughout history, the rulership, has passed through, the sons of God, the heathens, will have their turn, their rulership. Okay, we will get it back, under King David. All right, King Solomon, then we will fall, and then it will be a power struggle, with the heathen until the point to where we at now. All right, and the last heathen to rule will be Esau Edom. Okay, so we're gonna go, into prophecy. All right, that details these things, and now we know exactly where we're at in prophecy, man. Okay, so when you go to, all right, just to set the tone, okay, just to set the tone of the lesson. This is the book of Second Ezra chapter 6 and verse 7. Then answered I and said, what shall be the part asunder of the times? Or when shall be the end of the first and the beginning of it that followeth? Okay? So Ezra is inquiring about, the dividing, of times, in which the heathen will rule and, will mark the end of the heathen rulership and the beginning, all right, of the promised rulership of Israel that was going to be forever. Okay, so he's inquiring about the kingdom promised to our forefather that was going to be forever. Okay, this is back in. Remember, this is in the time of Ezra's time of the Persians. Okay, which Daniel prophesied of an everlasting kingdom. During the time of the Babylonians for Israel. Okay, so our forefathers, they understood that we had an everlasting kingdom coming to us that was promised, to our forefathers. Okay, so Ezra is inquiring about their rulership. He's like, what's going to divide the time? Because he knew there was a time when the heathen rulership would be cut off forever, and our rulership will begin forever. Okay, so Ezra is inquiring. All right, and this is what was told to him, verse 8, and it says, and he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. Okay, so Esau and Jacob, their physical birth, all right, their matter of fact, their warring in the womb was symbolic, for the power struggle that will always be and the animosity that will always exist between, all right, these two nations of people. Was Esau the progenitor of Edomites, and Jacob is the progenitor of the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, so this struggle in the womb, all right, will play out in the earth. Okay, because you look at this spiritual warfare that we're seeing today. It's the elite of Esau Edom. Okay, and it's the house of David that's raised up in these latter days. All right, by Yahweh by Shemal Shah, and this is the spiritual, all right, tug of war that we're seeing in the earth, man, as we preach this word, and this devil is going forth with his psyops and more enchantments. Well, that's symbolic, going all the way back to the struggle in the womb. And it's going to lead, to a physical, okay, tug of war. It's not going to be a tug of war because it's not going to be a back and forth when Yahweh Shai returns, man. Okay? It's going to be a one-way war. Okay? It's only going to be one side that's offensive. Okay? And Yahweh Shai will not need any defense when he come back. Okay? His offense is going to be his defense. Okay? When he come back to wage war on Esau Edom. Okay? But we have to understand, between Jacob and Esau, it will always, be this animosity, and this conflict. Okay, and this is what we're seeing playing out now. All right, as we get to the climax of this transition, because Esau is trying to hold on to power, all right, but it's that hand, Jacob's hand, had this man's heel, which is an end, which is pulling this man down. Okay, this is what happened, man. When the Lord raised the prophets up, all right, this will begin to expedite, okay, the fall and the destruction of Esau, man. You know, because so much has happened, you know, since the prophets have been raised up, going back to Elder Abba Business, all right, 1969, 1970. Well, you look at how active, you know, these decades have been from the 70s until now, all right, these 55 years. Okay, it's a lot that transpired in these 55 years to the point to where we at now, that we're at the door. Okay, these two major prophecies, you know, are building up as we speak. All right, the MOTB. All right, in World War III. Okay, which World War III is the war which Yahweh Shai will return. Okay, and wage war in righteousness, man. Okay, which is going to complete that transition. Because right now, the transition is in progress. But yeah, when Yahweh Shai returns, he's going to complete that transition with war. All right, and we'll get it. So reading again, it says, he said unto me, from Abraham unto Isaac, when Jacob and Esau were born of him, Jacob's hand held first the heel of Esau. For Esau was the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth, man. Okay, so Esau, you know, is the end of this age that we're in now. And Jacob represents the beginning of the age to follow. So what the Lord did, he raised us up, all right, in the midst of the end of this age, man. So this devil is at the very end of his age, his rulership, his dominion. The Lord raised up the next rulership, man. You know, because it's going to be a transition. That's why Jacob, you know, Jacob's hand held Esau's heel. Okay, Esau's kingdom will be birthed in the earth first. Okay, and my brother can put that definition for Renaissance up there, you know, and even get that word NATO in the Edom online. I believe, you know, they both going to a rebirth, you know, because this man rebirthed Rome back into the earth. He rebirthed Edom Rome back into the earth, man. Okay, but what will happen is a Jacob, right, rulership, all right, that Edom Rome would transition into the kingdom of Israel. So we're in the midst of that transition. Okay, and so Yahweh Shai coming back, their right hand, okay, that's going to solidify, all right, the kingdom of Israel, the beginning. Soon as we see Yahweh Shai, that's the beginning of our forever kingdom. Soon as that chariot, you know, soon as a micro, you know, millimeter of that chariot enter into this realm, that's the beginning of our kingdom forever, man, and the end of Esau's, man, and all these heathens, man. Okay, so you go here to the book of Psalms 50 and uh 20. It says, "Thou sittest and speak against thy brother, thou slanderest thy own mother's son." And this is speaking to the wicked Esau Edom, you know, which in his rulership, you know, he put a lot of emphasis, you know, on slandering us as a people, you know, put into the world like we're not the chosen. See, Esau, no one knows we're the chosen more than Esau Edom. Okay, and this devil has put a lot of emphasis on it, on emphasis in his empire to make sure that we go by these bywords. Okay, nigga, wetback, you know, blacks, African Americans, all right, Spanish, Latinos, Jamaicans, see all those bywords that we have on the sign. All right, he put a lot of emphasis on making that, you know, to be our identity, which was false. That's a slander, you know. To call an Israelite a Jamaican is really a slander. No, these are the sons of God. But right now, only the, you know, hopeful elect, okay, are considered, you know, the sons of God, you know, the daughters, you know, of Zion. At this point, those are the hopeful elect, okay. But when you look at it, you know, there's really a slander, you know, to call Issacharite a Hispanic, man. Okay, that's a byword. That's not, you know, who they are. Okay, so this man put a lot of emphasis on slandering us as a people, not only calling us by bywords, but presenting us as less than human. You know, his scientific racism, which that's been coming out a lot lately. Okay, so this man makes sure in his kingdom that we are, you know, the target of a lot of slander. Okay, and that goes back to that eternal, struggle, that strife, you know, that ancient rivalry. Okay, and it says verse 51. But see, this is what he can't. This is the one thing. This is one thing Esau can't stop. Okay, and that's prophecy, and that's us waking up, and eventually Hawashai coming back. So that's why you go to verse 21. These things hast thou done, and I kept silence. Thou thoughtest that I was altogether such as one as thyself, but I will reprove thee and set them in order before thine eyes, man. So what we have to understand, when the Lord raised us up, okay, he raised up the house of David in the middle of the kingdom of Esau. Okay, in the midst of this man's rulership, the Lord raised up the house of David, man. Okay, to tell this man about himself and to also prepare us, Lord will we of that number, for the next rulership, for this transition. We're being prepared to transition, man. This is why our mind shouldn't even be in this world. Okay, our mind shouldn't even be in this age. You see, this place is finished. All right, it's just a matter of time. That's why we're being prepared for the world to come. That's why our interest, we should be dead to the interests of this world, man. Okay? More and more, we should be dying to any interest in this world, man. We do what we got to do, okay? Get our day to day, but ultimately, man, we should be dying to any interest of this society, man, and this should be our everything, man, the world to come, what we're transitioning into, man. That should be the focal point of why we're here, man. Okay? Because we see everything else is bugging out, played out, okay, washed up, antique, okay, chaotic, riddled with death, okay, because this is a dying empire, man, and everything that's attached to it, okay, is playing out, okay. So the Lord raised us up. As you go here to 2 Corinthians, there was a particular time in which the Lord, will begin to speed up this transition, okay. Let's go here. All right, 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 1. Now verse 2. 2 Corinthians 6 and 2. It says, for he said, I have heard thee in a time accepted, and in the day of salvation I have secured thee. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation, man. So now we're in the accepted time where the Lord is hearing the prayers, okay, of the elect, whom he has raised up in these latter days, man. Okay? He raised us up for the purpose of transitioning kingdoms, man. This is why we're raised up, man. And this is how the Lord always does transition, even amongst the heathen, man. Okay? When it was time for the Assyrians to go down, all right, the Lord began to deal with the Babylonians, all right, and began to raise them up for the transition that was to come. Same thing with the Medo-Persian Empire. When it was time for Babylon to go down, he began to raise up the Medes and Persians, okay, for the transition of kingdoms, man. When there's time for the Medo-Persian Empire to go down, he began to what? Raise up the Greeks, because it was their time next, okay, all the way into the Romans. You see, so the Lord always, has another kingdom on standby. But see, this the last transition, because there'll be no transition after this, man. So this is that last time that the Lord is going to do this in the earth, translate empires from one people to another. This is the last time it's going to be done. All right, and let's get that, in the book of Daniel, which we always go to, chapter 2 and chapter. Then, matter of fact, we'll get to chapter 7 and kind of jump around a little bit, But first, let's get that in Daniel 2. Daniel saying, heavy prophecy, dealing with empire. Okay. It's the book of Daniel, chapter 2. Get straight to the point. I believe it's 43. All right, this is the book of Daniel, chapter 2, and verse 43. It said, whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, okay, matter of fact, I started at 44, get to the point. Because, see, right now we're in that time, of the 10 toes, and Daniel is breaking down the statue, starting with the golden head all the way down to the 10 toes, which that embodies, from the Syrian Babylonian Empire, the golden head, all the way down to the 10 toes, which today is America, NATO, and the EU. Okay, so right now we're in the feet of their empire, just as what Jacob held the foot of Esau. Okay, so the feet of this statue was an Edomite empire, man. All right, known as the NATO, EU, and America, man. Okay, which I read verse 43 since I went into that. All right, and it says, um, I started at 41. It says, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. Okay? And you go into verse 42, and as the toes of the feet, all right, were part of iron and a part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And aren't we seeing that today? Okay, with Trump, the least have, the least, have Trump, pushing division amongst the EU. Okay, you have, a lot of EU nations are divided, in their stance and foreign policy and military, doctrine. Okay, America, is pretty much drawing back from the EU and, putting EU security more, on those nations, on those EU nations. Okay, with this American first agenda. All right, and the EU is a very fractured, it's a fractured organization, and those EU nations, France, Germany, Poland, okay, London, you see, Ireland, Italy, you see, though it's a very fractured, organization, man. The EU, the economy, is being hammered right now. The military is weak as it's ever been. Okay, under the threat, of a Russian, invasion. Okay, so we're seeing, partly iron, all right, and part clay. So you have a few strong points within the EU, but you have a lot of weak points as well. Okay, and the Lord, showed Daniel these things. All right, verse 43. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Okay, which the devil, because you look at the earth, it's a pretty much a big EU / America colony, man. The earth is divided up for the most part, outside of China and Russia, which even China, okay, was heavily, influenced by the Brits. Okay, so most of the earth, all right, India, influenced by the British, the Spanish, or either, America, but ultimately when you look at the earth, it's colonized, okay, by these European Edomites / America, man. Okay, they mix themselves, with the seed of men. All right, and now what you have is all these governments are in an uproar, man. Okay, because Esau is a wicked ruler. You see, so when you read verse 44, this is the point. And in the days of these kings shall the power of heaven set up a kingdom. So the kingdom is being set up in the days of these kings. The house of David being raised up. Okay, the prophets have been raised up in preparation for this transition, man. Okay, so it says, in the days of these kings shall the Lord begin to set up a kingdom. That's why Yahweh said what? Let's get this. We go back to Daniel. You got this in Luke. I think there's Luke 20. It might be Luke 17, 21. All right, this is the book of Luke, chapter 17, and verse 21. It says, neither shall they say, lo here, or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of the Most High is within you. All right, so the kingdom starts within the elect, beginning with those first fruit. Okay, the men, who the Lord has raised up, to push this word and teach this word. Well, that's the beginning of the kingdom. You see, this is the beginning of the kingdom now. Okay, the transition has already started. Yahweh Shai is coming to complete the transition. Okay, but the transition is in progress now. Okay, so that's why it says in Daniel 2:44, and in the days of these kings shall the power of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Okay? So this is, all right, the last transition, because Israel is promised a kingdom that's going to stand forever, that's not going to be given to any other people. Okay? Because all throughout history of the earth, we've seen, rulership go from one people to another. Okay? Well, the kingdom of heaven is going to stop, all right, their process in the earth, all right, of kingdoms being translated from one people to another. No, this is the last one, okay? Under Yahweh Shai, the King of Kings, this is it. And it's going to be a Israelite empire forever. No matter how far you go into the future, okay, Israel will be in power, okay, everlasting, man. Because I say, if you went back, from the beginning, all right, and you just went through time, well, the rulerships will change, okay? Because if you went so far ahead, you go past the time of the Egyptian dynasties, okay? If you go a little further, you'll get into the Assyrian dynasties and keep going, you'll get into different people ruling. Well, in the kingdom, no matter how far you go into the future, Israel is always going to be in power under Yahweh Shai, okay? The kingdom will never be translated again. And see, this is what we're a part of, man. This is why this should be taken seriously. This is why, hey, this is our everything, man. Okay? What the hell else do we got to look forward to? Okay? What the hell do the Juneteenth celebration? Okay? Kodak Black album. Like, what the hell do we have to look forward to, man? Okay? Especially understanding what we understand and knowing what we know. We know what this place is, and we know what we got coming. So, I mean, hey, it's a no-brainer. That's why Apostle Paul said he count everything as dung for the excellency of Yahweh Shai. This is what Yahweh Shai has us on, man. Okay? The things in the world should be minute compared to what we got coming, man. Okay? So this is back in Daniel. Let's get that in Daniel. The 7th chapter, All right, this is Daniel 7, okay, and 13, it says, I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, in his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Okay, so this is what has been given to Yahweh Shai. Okay, and this is the authority that Yahweh Shai is bringing to the earth. Okay, which is dominion over everything, man, and it's going to be forever. It's an everlasting dominion. No other people was promised an everlasting dominion. This is only for, okay, Israel, man, beginning with Yahweh Shai. Okay, so this is the transition, that we see taking place real time, and this is what this devil, is working overtime trying to stop. Esau wants to stop this transition. Everything that this devil is doing, he's trying to stop this transition, man. Okay, but all thing that he can do is play into the hands of Yahweh Bashim Al Shah. Everything he's doing, he's scripted to do these things, man. Esau, he's in perfect character, okay, for what he's supposed to be doing in the end times, man. Okay? So going back into what? Everything is working, for our favor. Okay? And you jump down in Daniel the 7th chapter, all right? Because what we have to understand, America is what is an extension of their fourth beast, seen in Daniel the 7th chapter dealing with pagan Rome. Okay, and America is the last leg of that pagan Roman Empire that was revived, that was rebirthed in the earth, man. Okay, so Daniel's going to inquire about, this fourth beast. Okay, it said, then I would know the truth. Matter of fact, um, I started at 7, I started at 15, I read into it. It says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, which is an angel, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. He said, these great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth, man. 4 kingdoms, 4 empires, with the last being pagan Rome. Okay? But what's the conclusion? Because he's going to sum it up. See, Daniel 7 and 17 and 18 pretty much sums up, okay, the matter. Okay? So read 17 and then read straight into 18. He said, these great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And this is where we at with it, man. Okay? Well, we're in the time, all right, where the Lord has raised up his men to eventually take the kingdom, man. And that was even told during the time of Genesis. Okay, when the servant of Abraham, went to go get a wife, for Isaac, from amongst, Abraham's people. Well, when Sarah, okay, now when Rebecca, Salaki, when Rebecca was getting ready to leave, okay, her sisters came, and the spirit was on them to go into the transition of kingdoms, okay. You see, you go to Genesis 24. All right, like they went in, the spirit was on them. They went into the promises, man. Okay, like you think about it, like why would they just randomly, tell, Sarah, all right, as you go here. Now it says, and they called Rebecca. This is Genesis 24 and 58. And they called Rebecca and said unto her, wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they sent away Rebecca their sister and her nurse and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said unto her, thou art our sister. Be thou the mother of thousands of millions. And there's billions. And what does it say in Isaiah? A little one shall become 1,000, a small one, a strong nation. Okay? That's part of the promises. So the spirit is on them to go into the promises that they, bidding, their sister farewell. Okay? So it says, and they blessed Rebekah and said unto her, thou art our sisters, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, which Abraham was told what his seed was going to be the sand of the sea through Isaac and through Jacob. Okay? It says, and let thy seed, okay, which will eventually come, all right, which the seed, goes through the man, okay, but she carried the seed of Isaac, okay, which that seed produced Jacob and Esau, and Jacob being the chosen produced the 12 tribes. So that seed that is speaking of in this context is the seed, okay, of Jacob, okay, and it says, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. Okay? And the gate goes into your rulership. You go into it in the Hebrew, it goes into palaces, fortresses. Well, it's speaking of your rulership. Okay? So as you read in Daniel, said this, and the saints shall take the kingdom. Well, that was even told to Rebekah before, she even met Isaac. That her seed was going to possess the gate of those that hate them, man. Speaking of their rivalry that will be between Jacob and Esau, man. Okay? You see? So when you go back to Daniel 7 and 19, it said, then I will know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, okay, which, the pagan Rome didn't run off monarchy. You had, the Senate, you had the first counselor, okay? And then eventually had Caesars, okay? But you had a division, power was divided, okay, amongst, different government entities in ancient Rome, okay? It wasn't, the typical hereditary monarch, okay, of those ancient, of those other kingdoms that came before, the Syrians, the Babylonians, all right, the Medo-Persians and the Greeks, they dealt with, the monarchs, okay? But this fourth beast was diverse, which the way that America runs, all right, the EU, NATO, it runs on that same format, man, okay? And it says, um, he said, then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, break in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, because a pagan Rome dominated, the earth, great military, the military might, those legions, okay, the iron weaponry, it dominated, the earth, man, the Esau, Rome represents Esau's, okay, they represents his golden age, okay, because that was when he was his most influential, okay, he had the most wealth, and he had a strong military, so the Edom Rome, represents the peak of Esau's power in the earth, man. That's why he ran it back, during the Renaissance. Verse 20 says, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and on the others which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, okay, and that horn is speaking of America. And the 3 that fell before America was the British, French, and the Spanish, okay? And America will become the whore that rideth the beast, okay, the superpower, okay, of this beast government, man, okay? And it says, in a mouth that spake very great things, who look was more stout than his fellows, man. And you see America has a very proud stance, proud posture, in the earth, even towards these EU nations, man. All right. Trump embodies that, man, the way that he talks to these EU nations like some chumps, man. Okay? So we're here. All right? It says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. All right? Going back to the transatlantic slave trade. Okay? When Esau, during the Renaissance period, one of the first acts that this devil did was begin to come and conquer, all right, Jake and the lands that Jake had over here in the Western Hemisphere, and then he would begin to transport, all right, slaves from the slave coast in Africa over here to the New World. Okay, he overcame the saints. It was giving him the power to overcome the saints. You see, it says, I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. See, it always ends up in that transition. Because we just read about the transition in Daniel 7, 13, and 14. Then we read about it again in 17 and 18. So now you get down to verse 21 and 22. It transitioned again. Okay? And this is why, Esau, he can't reverse what's going to happen, man. He can't alter what's to happen, because it is locked in. The transition is locked in, man. Okay? And Esau is trying his best to put the brakes on this transition, man. That's why he's trying to get this NWO. He thinks, okay, that through left-hand magic and his technology and AI going, come through in the clutch form, and he's going to offset what's written. But nah, man, he's going to fail. Okay, it's written for him to try and fail. And right now he's in this time of trying, and it's a build-up to that failure, man. All right, and it's a build-up to our victory, man. Okay, and it says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time that the saints possessed, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, The fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth and tread it down and break it into pieces. And the 10 horns, all right, out of this kingdom, which represent the vassals, of the empire. And right now, all right, these EU nations are vassals of American empire, man, New Rome. Okay, and it says in the 10 horns, out of this kingdom are the 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings, which is America. Okay, and it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, which America is what spiritual Sodom and Egypt, where our Lord was crucified. Okay, he wasn't physically crucified here, but spiritually. All right, America, is at the forefront of the rebellion in the earth against Yahweh Bashim Al Shai. American culture itself is all about anti-Messiah. American, what they call popular culture, is all about anti-Messiah, man. Okay, and it says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, and the times, and the dividing of time. Okay, so when you go into the time is 100 years. Okay, times, is 200 years, so there's 300. That 100 year, then the times is 2 more 100 years, was 300, and then in dividing the time is 50 years, man. Okay, which goes into the era of 1619. Okay, when the bulk of the southern tribes started being transported over here, okay, to be in captivity, okay, in the Americas, in the Western Hemisphere, okay, which you already had the Northern Kingdom here, okay, and they began that period of 350 years leading up until, all right, Elder Abba Bivens, all right, in 1969, 1970, man, okay, when Yahweh Shai began to be preached, all right, to Jake, man, and that started to lift a standard up against this devil, okay, and now, that standard is so strong that the devil, is scrambling now, okay, the Lord will begin to chip away his empire, going back to Elder Abba Bivens, man. That was the beginning of the Lord to start to chip away at this man's empire, man, and now it's to the point to where it's noticeable that this man is losing power, and there's a transition happening, man. Okay, reading it again, it says, verse 26 said, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, all right, to consume and to destroy it until the end. So now we're in the time of judgment, man. See, now the Lord is beginning to strip this devil kingdom from him, man. Okay, this is what we're seeing. Esau's kingdom is being stripped from him, man. Okay, this is happening in real time. Okay, verse 27 says, in the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, okay, of the saints of the Most High, Israelites, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominion, all right, and all dominion shall serve and obey him. Okay, so the scriptures go into, they address, this last transition of empires, man. Okay, and there's no other kingdom spoken of after the kingdom of heaven being established, man, because that's it. This is the last transition. We're right here, man. Okay, so we're seeing, the Lord strip this man of authority, all right, and we're gaining authority in the earth, man. And see, when Yahweh Shai comes, I say he's coming to finish it off. Okay, matter of fact, let's get that, which we always get. We do the algorithm, but let's get that in Revelation 11. Okay, this is going to be the finisher. All right, this is the book of Revelation, chapter 11. Okay. It's the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly, man. So the second woe is past, and the third woe coming quickly. This third world's war. So the second woe is past, and the third woe coming quickly. All right, and this is where we at. All right, because no matter how these devils try to play it, it's going to lead with America and these small hats getting into with Iran, Russia and China jumping in. All right, and then you're going to have all out war in the earth. Okay, other nations are going to join. Okay, the least of the flock shall drag them out. So they're at the door to where wherever way they pivot with how they want to move, with this conflict, all right, amongst these small heads, America and Iran, well, it's going to lead to this third world war. Okay, you don't know how long they're going to drag out this back and forth, and Trump making these moves and these threats, and but we know one thing, when they cross that line, okay, that's going to be the third world's war, man. Okay, and it says, verse 15, it says, and the seven angels sounded, and there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdom of this world are become the kingdoms of his anointed. Okay, so the kingdoms of this world, all right, are going to be what? Become the kingdom of his anointed, and he shall reign forever and ever. Okay, so the kingdoms of this world are going to be the kingdoms of our Lord and his anointed. Lord, we of that number, we was anointed to be, saved, separated, and saved in these times. Okay, and it's going to be the completion of that transition of kingdoms. All right, when Yahweh Shah comes to end this war, okay, in righteousness, man, when he comes to obliterate the militaries of the earth, man, beginning with this beast system, okay, Russia and China, all these nations, Iran, okay, they're all going to be subdued, okay, under the power and authority of Yahweh Shah, okay, and it's going to complete that transition. You see, so Lord will, you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified once again. I'm going to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great example to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful that Shalom.